Hey everyone, it's Sean Stringham with Game On Live Studio, and we are thrilled to be launching a new podcast, where a new season of a podcast, the Game On Water Polo Pod. We are recording here in Salt Lake City at the new Studio 13 in Salt Lake City, and we'll be pulling guests in from all over the country. Today, for instance, we've got Dusty Litvak coming in from Princeton, New Jersey, talking about futures. We've got Jimmy Hurd coming in from 6'8" in Long Beach, talking about 6'8", ODP, travel, difference between water polo inside and outside of California. And then finally, we bring in Mr. Nate Last with Mental Grit, who's going to give us some strategies on how to perform best in high pressure situations. We've got in upcoming this weekend on Game On Live Studio on the New Goals Network, we have 7 courses of water polo play down in Texas for the regional ODP championships. So we have athletes traveling from all over the country, and we would love to have your parents, friends, family tune in and watch that. And then we're kicking off Futures League this weekend in Southern California with the 18U men down in Southern California, where we play that. And we'll talk all about that with Dusty. And then Sunday, we have, I think it's 6 or 7 courses in Northern California for the Northern California Futures as well. As we get into that, listen to the insights from Dusty, listen to the insights from Coach Jimmy, and then our mental skills trainer and partner, Nate Last with Mental Grit, has some incredible stuff for you. And with that, we're going to go right into our show. Thanks so much. And I'm excited to bring Dusty Litvak into the studio here. Dusty is joining us. I believe he's in Princeton. We never really know where each other are. So if we can get Dusty up onto the screen, we will bring him in.
I am in Princeton right now.
You are in Princeton right now. We had that exchange back and forth on the text of as we're coordinating this time of neither one of us really know which time zone we're in most of the time, but we're excited. Obviously, Game On Live Studio and Futures is going back now, 4 years as a Futures partnership, and we're excited about that, continue to see that grow. And as we are here, we're recording this on January 14th of 2025, and we're getting ready to kick off Futures League play this weekend in both Southern California and Northern California. Your key role is with the SoCal group, but we've got the 18U boys kicking off. Let's just talk about the league. We have a great opportunity. We're going to be streaming all of the 18U and 16U for both NorCal and SoCal, but there's some changes and some fun things that are happening with the league, and I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts, and we'll just kind of leave it with that as you give us what you're thinking about here as league director for 2025 in SoCal.
Yeah, thanks for having me again, Sean. It's a great partnership, and we love what you guys are doing, and it's just getting better every year with the coverage for our sport, the exposure for the athletes, the clubs that are up and coming, and the ones that have been powerhouses for a while. And it's just a great resource for college coaches, for grandparents, for everybody everywhere. And obviously, so much has transpired over this last week that is so much more important than water polo, but we're glad that, hopefully these games can just take some of these student athletes' minds off of just the tragedies and the tragic aftermath of what these fires have done to Southern California. And it's sad to see, but we did consider possibly postponing the games, but just from conversations with so many different coaches in the area, they really wanted to see some sense of normalcy for these athletes and give them something to look forward to in such a time of tragedy and then loss. So, we are looking forward to the first weekend of play, and giving, again, hopefully, a high level experience to the athletes and the clubs that are going to be participating in. And this weekend, there's a ton of games. As you mentioned, 1,800 boys kick off this weekend. Also 1,400 boys, 1,200 boys, 1,400 girls, 1,200 girls. And then Northern California boys kick off this weekend. The girls actually started a week prior. So ton of games all over California this weekend. Really hoping that the winds don't, do what they could do these next couple of days, and the games can continue as planned this weekend.
It's been amazing watching the coverage. I mean, we're here in Salt Lake, you're in Princeton. We both have strong ties to Southern California. Like, the images that are coming out of the fires and everything is just phenomenal. We've had We've talked offline a couple of times. I mean, we've got people who work for goals that have lost their home, right? We know for sure we've got some water polo athletes, and I'm sure clubs that are affected dramatically by the fires. I think it's a smart decision, like especially if you're getting the feedback from those coaches and the athletes to be able to play, and and move forward with it. And I think that sense of normalcy is key for those athletes. I mean, obviously we want to do what's best for the athletes in the end. So that'll be I think a good decision.
Yeah, and look, like obviously when everything happened, there's a lot more important things in water polo. And first thing I did is just reach out to a lot of the coaches I know in
Yeah.
the affected areas, impacted areas, just through relationships outside of Futures even, and just check in on them, their families, their clubs, and just as we see with all of this, and as we've seen on television as well, you see a tremendous amount of good things come out of it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
while these teams are highly competitive and kind of can go at it sometimes, now you see more support. You
Yeah.
see giving opportunities for training, and for these teams that that don't have anywhere to train right now, that the air quality is too bad where they live, or the schools are shut down, or the pools aren't available, whatever it may be. And they're providing opportunities for them to train. And that's kind of the feeling I was getting from a lot of the coaches is, hey, like, we're doing okay. We're going to be really out of shape. We haven't been able to train in a week or so,
Right.
but we are so looking forward to playing these games.
Well, as they say, there's a phrase you can say about that, and that's game on, right? Like it's there we go. Let's get on with it. Let's talk a little bit about the league itself. The league play for 2025 has changed a little bit. You've gone from 6 weekends down to 5. Again, kind of in our pre-meeting that we talked about, you had mentioned, and I'm coming from a coach perspective here on this question of like, you have the ability to really advance or fall out of your division on a week-to-week basis, and it's been 2 weeks in group play in the past, and the third week has been crossover. So, talk us through a little bit more about how the structure of the league is working out this year.
Yeah, so this is really pertaining to 18 and 16 under boys in SoCal. The 14s and 12s are the same as they've been in the past, and NorCal's operating pretty much the same. But for 18s and 16s in SoCal, as you mentioned, we went from 6 weekends to 5 just because of an impacted calendar and a lot more opportunities for younger players to play in different national leagues and things like that nowadays, and increased academy opportunities, et cetera. We had to revamp the format of the league. The old
Yeah.
format wouldn't work anymore going
Right.
from
Yeah.
6
Yeah.
to 5. So the way it is right now is we also expanded. We used to be 36 teams. Now we're up to 40. We'd like to go higher, but we're kind of restricted by the number of officials that can operate in a certain weekend. But the way it's going to start, for instance, is the let's say 1800 boys are divided in 4 divisions of 10 teams to begin with. Each of those divisions is divided into 2 groups of 5. So the first weekend,
Right.
you're going to play the other 4 teams in your group of 5. Depending on how you do, will determine what tournament you go into in weekend 2. So potentially, if you do really well, you have an opportunity to either stay in Division 1 or move up. If you're not, and if you don't do as well, then you're going to have to cross over with some teams that did well in the division but below you to see what things should look like in weekend 3. So weekend 2 is now a crossover weekend.
Right.
So weekend 1 becomes really important. Then depending on how you do in that crossover weekend 2, you go into weekend 3, which is very similar to weekend 1 but
Right.
reshuffled.
Okay.
Weekend 4 again, very similar to weekend 2 with the crossovers, and then weekend 5 is really to seed super finals. So the top 5 teams will play round robin, 6 through 10, all the way down through 36 through 40. We'll just play round robin to seed that final. When we incorporate NorCal and outside of California to seed the super finals, and so just it's going to be a lot more results based every weekend.
Yeah.
You got to show up to play. You can't have, like in the past, you can't have one bad weekend and then make up for it the next weekend and be
Right.
safe.
Right.
You got to show up every
You
weekend.
got to come up and play. And I think that, I mean, that is, in my mind, one of the best reasons I love participating in Futures as a coach and as a team, because you have those league games are so important, and I mean, every game is competitive. Like there's very few where it's, more than a 3 or 4 goal advantage or disadvantage for one or the other. And like, I know from a personal experience, right? Like you miss a couple of key players and have that impact your game. It's like, okay, well, we're going from Division 2 to Division 3 now because we missed those athletes. And so hopefully, I mean, I think part of the upside of that is hopefully it engages those athletes to want to come and participate every weekend. Yeah.
not just that, but want to come to practice.
Yeah. Yeah.
These athletes are always jazzed up to show up for high school practice because you're playing league games all the time, or you're playing in high
Right.
level tournaments, and like you gotta have to be there. But sometimes in club season, for some very valid reasons and some not, athletes maybe don't show up as often or don't take it as seriously and think that we'll just show up at the end. And look, you can kind of do that to a certain extent in terms of JOs. You can show up for JO quals and show up for JOs, and you're going to be fine. But
Right.
you can't mail it in for 4 or 5 weekends. You're not going to be in Division One come super finals. So it does that, but it gives opportunities. There's a lot of clubs that kind of have done things the right way, grassroots, kind of built their programs up. They started off in Futures 3-4 years ago in D4, D3, and now they're constants in D1 and D2, and that's really cool to see as well.
Super cool. Yeah.
It gives them something to shoot for. And then there's also the this, what we want, as you mentioned, is we want close games. So there's potential for weekend one, just because nobody really knows much right now.
Right.
That teams are going to be misplaced, and this gives that opportunity to rearrange and reshuffle it so that they do get competitive games throughout the league. You have a team this year. Last year the all-star team was Vanguard seniors, right? So they had to start in D2 because that's how Vanguard did the previous year.
Right.
They didn't get, just placed in D1. And then obviously they earned their way into D1 this year. The North Irvine, I think they're calling themselves the Beast Boys. So those guys, they have to start in D2. That's where they finished, even though they probably have the talent to compete with a lot of the D1 teams, but they're going to have to earn it just like everybody else.
Very cool. And so, I mean, obviously the progression through these 5 weeks in SoCal and 5 and 6 weeks in other places, like the end destination for this is super finals, right? Super finals this year is going to be back up in NorCal as JO swaps back and forth between Northern and Southern California. Do you have the dates of those right off the top of your head so people can pencil them down in their calendars?
Give me 1 second. I'll give them for you, but I'm pretty sure it's June. The girls are June 20th through 22nd.
Yeah.
And the boys are June 27th through 29th. And the girls will be in the East Bay. We actually secured a speaker at Cal for the final day of girls, which is great. Guy Big went all over that.
Yeah.
And then the guys will be on the peninsula side, more like JO, so Palo Alto and San Jose area and those surrounding areas. Working really hard to try to secure Stanford Avery, but that's a really hard, ask. So if we aren't able to do it, there's a lot of other amazing facilities around the area to host the final day.
Yeah, it's always great. We love streaming up in NorCal, beautiful places, right? And beautiful pools, a little bit more spread out than Southern California, but it makes for a fun summer of travel up and down the California coast, I-5 there, getting to spaces. What, talk a little bit about the teams, right? Let's talk. Well, that's been one of the things we want to do is to do a little bit more storytelling as we go through this. And we're hoping to have a weekly part of this podcast. And episode 1 is really to kind of set the stage and tell the story of what's happening from week to week. And kind of, we're not going to talk about any results, but let's talk about what you think, looking at and staring at that schedule for the last, incessant amount of time. Like who do you have your eyes on?
I mean, it's early, so we're gonna have to see how this thing plays out. I will say, the other thing that we know happens a lot in between club seasons is people change clubs.
Right.
So, whether that's seniors who've graduated who can't play for their high school club anymore, or just decide to switch clubs on their own, that happens a lot in NorCal and in SoCal. So, kind of seeing how these new teams are forming and how that's impacted things will be really interesting. And then you have clubs that kind of dominated. Let's say, for instance, like Del Mar, who's been just so dominant at the 12 and unders, 14, 16s. Well, how are they going to be at 18s this year?
Yeah.
Right away in weekend one, I think maybe even on the first day they play Newport.
Right.
And, that's going to it could be an incredible game, in terms of a team like Newport who won 18s and 16s JOs last year has been good for many years. And a team like Del Mar who's just been climbing the ranks through their younger age groups. And now those kids are aging into 18s, to see how that plays out. So looking forward to that for sure.
Right.
Looking forward to, like as I mentioned before, that the North Irvine team, to see how that team is gelling and figuring themselves out and how they do in that D2 environment on the first weekend playing together. But all throughout the 4 divisions of SoCal, there's also a lot of teams, as we talked about before, that were really impacted by the fires and the shutdown. So just seeing these teams having fun, a lot of energy to come and play. I mean, I'm sure I'll leave out a few, but teams like Rose Bowl, Pasadena Aquatics, Santa Monica Aquatics, Aura WP out of Glendale. I know Premier, even South Coast. I know they lost a couple of their players lost their houses. Like just to see these athletes be able to come out and perform is really exciting. And I've also had a decent amount of college coaches reach out to me asking for schedules. So hopefully there'll be a pretty good turnout, the first weekend as well.
Yeah. Well, and obviously, I mean, they can want to see them live, but we're also obviously streaming them live. And just from our perspective, we are rolling out our new goals network. So for those in the past who have looked at all of those on YouTube, we're going to take those now in-house where we have a little bit more control of those streams and hopefully be able to keep those up without copyright content. We're still going to be using YouTube as a tool to post some of the premier games here and there, and obviously rolling the podcast and various stuff. But along with that, we'll have the Goals app that we just have published over the fall and have kind of kept quiet in testing. So that's another nice tool. And all of those games will be preloaded into the app, so that all they have to do is download the app and watch that Goals app to see those games. So we won't be fighting the background music anymore, which is maybe the best news of all, outside of getting back on the water and playing. So we're excited about that. Tell me, like future plan. What are your ultimate plans for the Futures League? I mean, you've been spending so many hours and like getting pools and all of that, but what's the 2-year plan, 3-year, 5-year plan of Futures? Where do you see it going? I mean, you don't want to share all your secrets, but I would love to kind of know.
I don't know if there's any secrets. I mean, a couple of things. When the league started, which is, I don't even know, 2016, 2017, is a while ago. It was 16 teams. It was, I think, 18 unders, 8 teams, and 16 unders, and that was pretty much it. So to see where it's grown, and the original intent again was high level for the top clubs, and to provide some sort of relegation system to give the athletes something to really work for and train for and look forward to every weekend. I think, as we've expanded, we want to maintain the quality, and that's tough to do, of course. And so having the right people involved has been really critical. Obviously, our relationship with you guys has been huge, because, as a league director and even as our league coordinators, we can't be everywhere, but we can check out streams. So if issues arise in different situations, we can check it out live, or I've reached out to you several times to get some content back quickly. So myself and our referees can review it and see if something needs to be done. So maintaining the quality, I think, is a big piece of the league expansion. We want to provide this for as many clubs as that want to participate, and they're doing things the right way and are reputable clubs and really respect what the league is about. I'd be lying to you if I said we weren't thinking even bigger and more global and trying to incorporate international teams at some point, because I think that is something that's lacking. I think we know that for our student athletes to get international experience, for these athletes to get international experience, these clubs, they have to go there, for the most part. And so trying to figure out a way to incorporate the two and work with some leagues over there, I think would be huge.
That'd be massive, yeah.
Provide just a lot of opportunities for those athletes, to come here, and to get in front of college coaches as well. But also for our athletes to play different teams, because I know they can get tired of playing the same teams over and over and over.
Sure. Well, and I think you mentioned international, probably a good segue into talking about your new league sponsor. Is there?
Yeah. First, I mean, obviously still grateful to be partnered with you guys at Goals, and then with Cap 7 as well. And then this year, Bupa out of Barcelona. So they've gone global as well. And we're going to be working with them this year, and really excited. It's a fantastic company. I've known those guys for years. Actually, when I was a high school and club coach, we did an international trip through them in Barcelona, which was fantastic. But they've got their footprint now in the US and really globally, and have partnered with several top level athletes. So really just, again, this is new, and we'll see how this develops, but there's a lot of exciting things that they're doing, and I think that we're doing, and I think it's going to be a great partnership.
Yeah, should be some really cool stuff, and we'll look forward to, obviously we'll be there every weekend. We're excited to tell that story, and it goes without saying, like, congratulations on a great run for Princeton this year in the men's NC2A. Probably didn't you always want to get to that championship game, but you've been to California now several times in a row representing there. Good job.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you.
You bet. Dusty, any final words before we transition into our next guest?
Just, like I said, we're looking forward to the games. There's perspective with all this and everything that's going on in Southern California, and I'm just hopeful that everybody can keep that in mind, and that sportsmanship will be of the highest priority for everybody, and the games are competitive as they should be.
Yeah.
Not only have the players not played meaningful games in close to 2 months, some of them,
Right.
but a lot of the officials have not officiated
Right.
meaningful games in
Right.
the same amount of time. So to have a little bit of patience, as competitive as we all are, I'm a coach as well, with the officials, and that everybody is going to be, shaking the rust off a little bit, and getting themselves into it. I can assure you that no official comes into any pool deck thinking that they want a certain team to win or lose,
Right.
or is
Right.
any grudge, or is going to impact the outcome of a game more often than not. Mistakes are going to be made, and we all just need to, I hope, have, again, just some perspective of what this is all about, and it's the athletes and getting the best possible experience for them.
Yeah, and I think bringing the officials conversation into it is critical, right? Like, um, we all want to play water polo, and we all need great officials and great training. And so, I know you have that, definitely have that mindset of trying to go through that, and we've had that conversation about how we can best support the officials. So, you want to talk to them, but you don't need to scream at them, right? As you go forward. So, um, cool, Dusty. Thanks for joining us again, carving some time out. We've got gear going all over the country this week, and we're excited to get it down to SoCal and NorCal, and be streaming. We've got the ODP in Texas on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but then Saturday, Sunday in SoCal, Sunday in Northern California. We're starting off the year strong with 17 courses on Sunday. So if you love water polo, you can watch it all. So cool, man. Thanks
Awesome.
for joining us.
Thank you, Sean.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Take care.
Dusty. Appreciate it.
Bye.
All right. Thanks again to Dusty Litvak, who is the SoCal League Director and the brains behind all of Futures. And he's doing incredible work. We've been thrilled to be partners with Dusty. Started as super finals in 2021 here in Salt Lake City. Our coverage has continued to grow and will continue to grow. We're just really thrilled to be partners with Dusty and the Futures Water Polo League. All right. Coming up next, our next guest here on the Water Polo podcast here, episode 1 of season 3, is going to be the one and the only, none other than Jimmy Hurd from 6-8 Sports. Jimmy, are you there?
Sean.
Yo. What's up, Jimmy?
Up?
How are you? How's California?
Dude, first and foremost, Sean, thanks for having me today.
My pleasure.
Super to be here. I think it's funny because we go back now about 4 years.
Yep.
And even now, whenever I see you, one of the first things I always say is, Sean, game on.
Game on. Yep, that's it. And I can attest. Jimmy and I talk and text pretty regularly, and most of those conversations either start or end with game on. So I appreciate you embracing the brand, Jimmy.
It's a pleasure. And as you would say, the game is always on.
The game is always on. The game is always on, and we're always trying to make the game better. And speaking of making the game better, like Jimmy, we'll do a brief introduction, but Jimmy Hurd is the sport growth manager director for 6-8. Go ahead and give me your full title at 6-8 these days.
So it's the director of events and sport growth.
There you go. Thank you. And so, but you've had a fun water polo journey as we get through this. We've met, and you've recently moved from Chicago, Illinois, right? Having that perspective of outside California water polo, and moved down to Long Beach, one of the prettiest places in the world, and are living the SoCal water polo dream now. How's the transition from Chicago to California treating you?
Well, Sean, it is January 14th currently,
Yes.
And I'm not freezing cold right now, which has been really refreshing. The sun is out, and it's a nice day out there. But no, outside of the weather, I think that one of the cool things about Southern California and just California in general is you'll be, out and about somewhere, going to the grocery store, going to the pool, whatever, and you'll just see water polo car, water polo hat, like just everyone's geared up in water polo,
right,
in this neck of the woods, which is not common in the Midwest. And so It's just refreshing to see that water polo is so prominent in California and in Southern California.
Well, and you've always had such a great sport growth mindset. Like you were very successful back in Chicago with Eastside and building an incredible club back there and building athletes. and a fantastic opportunity was given to you by Tony and Maggie to come out and be a part of 6-8. Is there anything about Chicago that you miss other than, and probably the food would be one of them, but I would be curious of give a shout out to your Chicago people out there who might be listening of like, what are the things you miss about Chicago?
Man, I mean, letting go and having to say goodbye to some of my East Side athletes, that was a big one for sure. We created a really fun and engaging community out there, and so the 150 some athletes that have moved on to other programs,
right,
or go to college, who I still stay in contact with now. Yeah, missing that community deeply on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But it's also been fun creating new
yeah,
communities here in Southern California.
And
outside of those, oh, sorry, Sean.
Go ahead.
Yeah, outside of the community, you're right. Food for sure. Some of my favorite spots out in Chicago, but I've recovered to those here in Southern California and kind of made up for those. But yeah, missing some friends and family and different spaces in Chicago for sure.
Cool. Well, and you have a great gig. I mean, you live water polo, right? And I would recommend, as we go through here, like if you don't already follow Jimmy Hurd on social media, you need to, because his content is top tier in terms of just showing what the water polo lifestyle is really like and what life in with 6-8 is like. I mean, 6-8 has multiple different products, and Game On Live Studio and 6-8 we've gone back, we've been a part of the startup for each of those organizations, kind of with supporting each other. We've run a ton. I think it's just up over now 20 to 22 showcases around the country where we've gone with the 6-8. We'll talk a little bit about that. We've supported each other back and forth on Game Desk, but a lot of your duties right now are both in coaching at Academy and supporting Tony. But talk a little bit about the 6-8 Academy and kind of what Tony and Maggie are doing there in Long Beach at Los Cab.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so the 6-8 Academy, I feel, is a really unique space where athletes that are either local to California, or from even Las Vegas, New York,
right,
so on and so forth, all over the country, they can come into a single location and be a relatively full-time water polo athlete. And what I mean by that is they'll start their morning at 8 o'clock in the morning in what we call the lab, which is where we concoct all of the strength and conditioning situations with Coach X. And so the athletes will do like a dynamic warm-up, rollout, stretch situation from 8 until 8:30. And then from 8:30 until about 9:15, they'll break out into one of two groups. They're either going to go into a strength training session with Coach X, they'll go into a mental performance session with Bridget, or they'll even do virtual reality, film review, film study with Tony, Maggie, myself, Rico, etc. And then at 9:30, we'll get in the water. And so from 9:30 until 12, the athletes are getting after it, to say the least.
Right. And that's every day. Like, it's not just a weekend thing, right? Like they are full time. Some are living there. Some are living at the complex. Some are living off site, but they're training Monday through Saturday.
Monday through Friday.
Wow. And then
how do they?
Go ahead.
They're still able to do the academy in the morning, but then have their club time at night. And so whether they're with a local high school or with a local club, they can do both.
And they are still academically engaged? How do they manage school?
Absolutely. It kind of depends on the student athlete. Some athletes will do like a hybrid school version where they'll go to the 6-8 Academy in the morning, early afternoon, and then they'll go into school directly after that. Or that might end up being like an online day where they'll go home and do the rest of their schooling for that day online. And we also have the student athletes that do all of their school just strictly online. So it kind of depends on what you're looking for.
Right. Well, and what's amazing is just the amount of metrics and measurement that's happening, right? I mean, if something that's not measured is not improved typically. Mm-hmm. But I've seen from Utah, where my home base is, like I've seen many of my athletes go to academy and then come back, and they're totally different athletes, right? That's really one of the strengths of that, is to just have that world-class coaching with Rico, Tony, Maggie, yourself, X, Bridget, etc. And the growth that happens, I mean, you have a pretty good placement record for those of you who are coming out of high school and then want to go on and play in college, right? I mean, that really is kind of the next step for them, is to try and find a place to go and play, right? Next level.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone's a little bit different. We have some athletes that are, 12 to 14 years old that are just trying to
Right.
make the freshman varsity rosters, or
Right.
we have that senior who's trying to get recruited to a college here in the country. And so we have a mixed boat of all the above. And we've sent athletes to Stanford, UCLA, USC, Princeton, Brown, Harvard, Cal, like the list goes on and on. I
Right.
think almost every school at this point is being represented in some way, shape, or form, either with our academy athletes or
Right.
with our showcase athletes, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, and let's transition to showcase a little bit. I mean, one of the things that I was going to say, it's a kind of an international affair too. I mean, we've seen kids at showcases that are coming to participate, or either in showcase or are coming to academy that now are from New Zealand, South Africa, Australia. I mean, I can't remember where Tico was from. Like he was from Brazil, as I recall, right?
Still,
Yeah.
yeah,
And so, I mean, it's kind of an international flair. So obviously that helps support because you have different flavors of the game that are coming together and getting some of those different experience. But let's talk a little bit about showcase. So we've had one. We did Palo Alto, and then two. We've done two this year in Canada. That's right, Vancouver. Can't forget Vancouver and Palo Alto in this session. The next one is actually coming to Salt Lake. So, but tell the listeners and viewers a little bit about what we do in those showcases.
Yeah, absolutely. So the 6-8 series showcase is a 3-day event where athletes will arrive on a late afternoon of a Friday, and we'll start on deck at 4:30 with some check-ins. And that full first day is all about just getting an evaluation done and collecting some information from that athlete. And so we'll go through the 6-8 challenge to help create that data. In addition to that, we'll do like a clinic-y style on that first day. We'll do technical training, tactical training, passing, shooting, 6-on-5, so on and so forth. So that first day is really just for us to get to know the athletes, and also for the athletes to get to know us and the other campers that are on site. After we collect all that information on day one, you and I, late on Friday night, will end up then creating 4 balance teams. And so we use the 6-8 challenge technology to create those rosters for the rest of the weekend. And so we have 4 boys teams, 4 girls teams, about like 9-ish players, 9 field players per roster, 1 goalie per roster.
And excellent playing time at the showcases. Everyone gets their fair share.
you get the minutes. Let's just say Sunday night, you want to go straight to bed.
Please let me go home. Yeah.
Literally. The rest of the weekend, they're just going to play. And so we call them scrimmages. We're not playing any official games. I think the event is unique in that way, where they're not official games. This is a camp-based event, and the athletes in the middle of a scrimmage could get pulled out by a coach and get taken to the warm-up pool and be like, hey, let's work on your pressure passing for 5-10 minutes.
Right.
And then we'll toss you back into that scrimmage. And so it's a really learning-based opportunity that isn't just limited to competition, but it's also holistic in the sense of we try to make it as encompassing as possible. So we're incorporating strength and conditioning, mental performance, in addition to, we call it Tony and Maggie time, where they'll sit with Tony and or Maggie and just watch what's happening in the moment within that scrimmage and get in the moment game analysis and feedback. Now, we also pull in different coaches from around the country and at times from around the world to not only coach the event, but then to also answer questions and comments from those athletes about either college recruitment, nutrition, so on and so forth. And so we're striving to make it a really holistic event. And then fast forwarding to that last day, they'll play their third scrimmage of the weekend on Sunday morning. And then you, me, Tony, will revamp the teams, which is a very quick process. We'll revamp the teams, and that last scrimmage of the weekend ends up being either a gold medal or a bronze medal scrimmage. So the top, let's just say 12 field players and the top 2 goalies will go to a gold medal scrimmage, and then vice versa for the bronze.
Right.
And so it's a long weekend.
And just so everyone knows, we're not just using our all-knowing powers to create the teams, right? We're using the data supported from the game desk technology, right? So we're scoring those on the overall plus minuses, and we're adapting those and we're tracking that. I mean, and the athletes are rewarded for great play. And part of the fun, and we'll transition and kind of talk about game desk, is that those athletes have the opportunity to have those official scores in their Game Desk app, which allows them to be able to see their overall plus minus and kind of see where they're comparing. And also, I mean, I think the big plug for Game Desk is that, you think about who are the top athletes. Well, they're always the ones, not always, typically considered the ones that are the ones scoring goals. But what the Game Desk and plus minus does for athletes, right? And again, from a coaching perspective and from a streaming perspective, is like you create those rewards and for assists and earned exclusions and blocks and steals. And so you might have an athlete that might score 1 or 2 goals in a game, but has a very high plus minus because they're constantly serving the team and delivering play away from those goals. And so we use that as the framework to create the teams or move the teams forward as we go forward. But then, I think we talk a little bit about Game Desk. I mean, Game Desk is our 6-8 is an official sponsor, as is Game On Live Studio with USA Water Polo. And so we're working on some integrations where we're going to be able to see Game Desk happening in live time on goal streams, and we're pretty excited about that. That's pretty cool. We premiered that at Palo Alto, and we just hope all the pieces come together. Right?
It's going to happen. I believe
it's totally going to happen, right? It's totally going to happen.
Is on.
But the game is on, and so, but like we're hoping to continue to push that forward and tell some of those additional athlete stories. So, anything else you want to add on Game Desk, Jimmy?
Yeah, Sean, I think you mentioned part of it, which was, athletes or parents, spectators, et cetera, they always focus on, generally speaking, goals being scored. And so Sean Stringham, number 1 in the pool, who is our goalie extraordinaire, but also a field player. He's doing all the roles. He has 2 goals scored, but this other kid has 7 goals scored. Wow, Sean must be having a terrible game.
Right.
Well, little do you know, Sean also happens to have 5 assists, 4 blocks, 5 earned exclusions. And so his plus minus, it ends up being significantly higher than maybe that top score, right? Because Sean has a very balanced game in comparison to some of his teammates. And so I think it just takes away the idea of, hey, let's stop focusing just on who scored the goals, or maybe even for like an athlete who, man, I'm having a terrible game today. Well, are you though? Because you've shown yourself in so many other ways that are helping the team significantly.
Right. Yeah.
So I think it's an amazing tool for coaches, athletes, and parents to really see the holistic side of the sport and of the game itself, in the sense of it's not just about the goals. You got to make sure that you're balanced across the board in defense and in offense.
When I was playing water polo back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, I wish we would have had a plus minus, because you just described my game. Like I loved assists. I loved blocks. I loved earned exclusions, right? I scored some goals in my time, but like for the most part, I loved a lot team play. I would have dominated plus minus, honestly.
I believe that. But wait, what position did you play?
I was a center defender.
Center defender.
So
thanks. So you'd be the one that's taking the center all over the place.
Now. I was, and I was a good swimmer, so I could go coast to coast. I center defender and attacker. So, but I loved so I would come down into the 3 position at the on the point on the offensive side, and give me the ball, and I could put the ball wherever you wanted to score. So that was one of my superpowers at the time. So anyway,
we'll get you in the water soon, Sean. I want to see some of these amazing passes.
I'm trying to get back in shape. Yeah, I can still you've seen it. Like I can put the ball in the center when we drop the ball in. I
have seen it.
You have seen that, right?
I have seen it. You're right.
I can. It's all that baseball growing up. I can throw a ball where you want me to throw it. So I do have that skill. Jimmy, anything as we get ready? Hopefully we'll have you on here a few more times as we get into it. Any advice for those athletes going out to ODP or to Futures this weekend? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first and foremost, just have fun. My gosh, you play an amazing game with really cool people,
right?
And you get to grow as a human being, but also as a student athlete as you excel. So just enjoy the moment, and it's a roller coaster. So you're gonna have highs and lows as the journey progresses, but just try to strive to enjoy each moment as it happens. Defense is key. Keep your hips up. Make sure that you're always releasing and being active in the front court. Don't just sit still. If you're watching more than 2 seconds, you're doing something wrong. You should always be either releasing, passing, shooting, driving, or covering back defensively. But if you're not doing one of those 5 things, then again, you're doing something wrong. and then listen to your coach.
Yeah. Listen to Coach Jimmy. Listen, he's just dropping bombs right there, like right there. Hey, one thing from a coaching perspective, I'll ask this: with your transition from Chicago down to Long Beach and listening to Tony and Maggie and Rico, what's one kind of coaching nugget out there that you've learned in your time in California that maybe you didn't apply or didn't think about much in Chicago outside of California, but now with the incredible amount of international game experience that they have that you think about a lot now?
Yeah, man, I don't know if I could actually just pick one. I have one, which I'll share momentarily, but I'll let you know that there's so much that's happening here.
Right.
It's constant knowledge. And I think I'll add one more piece of advice to the Futures and ODP athletes for this upcoming weekend is ask questions and be a sponge, and take notes while you do it. But I think the one thing that stands out from how I was coaching prior to moving here to now is the amount of shooting and the amount of playing that actually happened. I think it's all really intentional. And with the shooting in mind, it's about your respective position and how you shoot in the respective game. Are you a driver? Are you going to be at the two, driving into a defender, coming open to get the pass from behind the back, and then looking kind of dunk the ball? Or maybe you're looking to get inside water, whatever the situation might be. You're going to be shooting based off that respective position, and then getting those kind of reads and reps as you're progressing forward. And then also just lots of play. I felt like when I was in Chicago as a zone for ODP, and then also for my club, we didn't play as much as I wanted to, or as much as we did. But looking here, we're playing almost every single day.
Right.
At the end of the day, that's the game. It's to play water polo. And so, but then don't let it be just loose and free. Strive to create themes and objectives as you're doing so. So if it's going to be a 6-on-5 day or what have you.
Cool. Yeah. As we're going to end here, as I typically do, when we're at the showcases and we're interviewing those post-game interviews with those athletes, one of my favorite things. Jimmy, we're going to give you an opportunity to give a shout out. Who do you want to give a shout out to?
Ooh, definitely to Tony, Maggie, Rico, and the whole gang here at 6-8. Really happy to be part of the team and all the work that we're doing here. Our partnership with Game On Live Studio, USA Water Polo, and everyone else.
Yeah.
And then I'll end with Tony right now is actually in New Zealand running a series of camps and clinics, and also doing a mini version of our showcase out there. And so shout out to Seawolf Water Polo.
Seawolf.
We're the hosts of the program out there, and to Mr. Ollie, who's assisting Tony in all the logistics.
Cool.
Thanks for what you're doing out there, Ollie.
Great. Jimmy, it's always great. Let's do it again. Can we?
Game on.
Cool.
Let's do it.
Take it easy, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Sean. Bye.
All right. See you. Bye-bye. All right. That's a great look there with Jimmy, one of the great personalities in water polo in 2025. We'll see more from him. We're going to hold tight here. Again, as we come into, we're just bringing in our next guest, which is going to be Nate Last. We're just working on that transition. I think he's almost up there. But here we go. Nate Last, are you there?
Heck yeah.
All right. He is a little hot in my ears. Trevor, can we pull that down just a little bit? I mean, he's also hot on the screen. Look at him.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
If you can't tell, listeners, Nate and I have a little bit of a bromance that goes back probably 10 years a little bit. So
there's that. There's that.
And Nate, thanks for being here. This will be a fun conversation, and I owe you a ton for all of the support that you've given to Game On Live Studio over the last couple of years, and our experience together. For those of you who, as we're rolling out the new studio here, what we're calling Studio 13, Nate is the guy who essentially built my backdrop. So Nate.
Oh, we did do that, and it does look good. I'm very excited about that.
So I'm hyped about that. We built that in my driveway, and it's moved around a couple of times. But finally, I was just talking with Trevor Linton, who's our producer here in the studio, about it's taken a year of work and time, but we're gonna make this happen as we go through. So again, Nate, thanks for joining us.
Heck yeah.
Nate, not only is an incredible craftsman and has helped on lots of different streams, but he's also an incredible mental performance coach and owns the company by the name of Mental Grit. Mate, give us a little bit of a background on Mental Grit and kind of your experience. Not necessarily your services, but like just your place in life, like what you like to do, right? And what you do with the athletes.
No doubt. I mean, Mental Grit was born out of this idea that, we all need more mental skill, not later in life when it's typically provided, to learn how to control things like self-talk and emotional response control and the images that are happening in our heads. And so I kind of found out about this later in life, unfortunately, and realized that sports psychology and mental performance, man, I asked the question, what if I would have had this when I was 14 years old?
Right.
On the golf course, like honestly, just berating myself after every bad shot and visualizing all the failure that could happen on the course, and ultimately, destroying my love for the game. Because it was, these images in my head and this experience that I was having that just destroyed the game for my, for me. And honestly, it seems like for a lot of athletes out there, the head can definitely play a big role in negating the passion and negating the excitement and the love, for whatever sport you're doing. And so, I built Mental Grit out of that need and that desire of like, what if I would have had this when I was a kid? And so the big mission ultimately is providing mental performance training for teen athletes across the nation and making sure they have full control over this thing on top of their shoulders, develop the skills they need in order to kind of use their head to help them rather than hurt them.
Right.
And that's kind of where we're at in life right now. And being able to work with teen athletes is absolutely a passion of mine, as this is what I needed when I was a kid. So that's kind of the initial conversation I would guess what I would have there.
Super cool. And Nate has his background is in, obviously he's got a master's degree in sport and exercise psychology. And we connected way back. It's been 10 years now, at least, right? Where that one of my master's degrees as well is in exercise and sport psychology. So we have great conversations. We both come from the same framework in terms of trying to create a place for athletes to be able to really be their best. And Nate, it's what I really wanted to talk about this week in episode 1 is you may or may not have heard Dusty in the first segment where he's talking about we've got athletes coming in. They've been affected by the fires in Southern California, right?
Yeah.
They've
got a few out there right now.
Yeah, yep. They've had limited play time. They've had limited practice time. So, and they're it's definitely like the amount of time out of the water is not as like what we had with COVID in terms of being out of the water, but they're coming back to play. And then the other element is that we've got a high pressure playing situation in Texas happening with USA Water Polo, the regional tournament, where we've got teams and athletes coming from all over the country, traveling, coming to Dallas, coming together and playing the other teams. 2 very high stress situations from an athletic standpoint.
Yeah.
I would love if you just drop some knowledge on terms of like, what are some of the key strategies that athletes can use to help manage that as they progress through the weekend?
I mean, I'm going to be completely frank. I mean, what do we got? Like games this weekend, I'm assuming it is currently Tuesday. Yes.
It's Tuesday. Yep.
Okay. Well, I'm going to drop it right now. Athletes, if you're sitting there thinking about and being in the water this weekend, you're not where your feet are. That's for sure. And I've found many, many times that athletes will essentially, they'll start thinking about and engaging in things that are happening far down the road, whether it's weeks or months or years ahead of time. And unfortunately, they kind of get caught up in staying in that place where, they're thinking about, okay, I've got this high pressure situation coming up this weekend. We're not even within 48 hours of the event at this point.
Right.
And I'm going to be completely honest with you. You're going to exhaust yourself thinking about things. And I don't know. I mean, you guys can all tell me, like, have you ever had that situation where, you have the big event coming up, you've been training for it weeks and months and in advance or what have you, and you get to the event and you're just spent.
Yeah.
And you're just sitting there exhausted and you're like, wow, it's finally here. And I am totally gassed. And you feel just totally like, have you ever been there, Sean? Have you ever had athletes where you've kind of found that situation?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's why we're talking about it, right? Is the ability to, how do you be present? Great athletes are present, right? In terms
and great
of where they are.
Yeah. And I'm just going to give just a general rule right now. Athletes, if you've got an event that's, that's in the future, fantastic. You want to have, the goals on the horizon. You want to have your direction. 2 thumbs way up on that. And if you get stuck there, if you, are spending 85% of your focus and your attention on something that's happening in the future, you are spending your time and effort in somewhere that you can't do anything about.
Yeah.
Okay. And I need everyone to realize that you have zero control over what's going to happen in a month, in a week, and even the next hour. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. The only place that you can do anything about anything is right now.
Right.
So if you notice that you're going into the future, you're worrying about the teams that you're going to play, you're worrying about what's going to be happening or what have you, just notice it and realize that you can't do anything about it. And honestly, recognize that you can come back to where you are right now. And again, this is the present moment in this time. If you're listening to this podcast, listen to the dang podcast and just be present with it, because you're not going to be able to do anything about what's going to happen this weekend.
Right.
So in my kind of frame of things, in terms of strategy or what have you, the athletes that I work with, we always have the 48-hour rule. 48 hours before and 48 hours after. We can only start really focusing on preparing ourselves, our bodies and our minds, within about 48 hours of a competition. And so I would absolutely recommend start developing, even today, tomorrow, the next day, kind of a general plan of how you're going to get your body and mind in a place of performance, of readiness, 48 hours before that event. Right? Have that kind of plan put together. Okay, day 1, I land, I do these things. I go get my cold plunge done. I get my massage done. I go get my nails did because I want to look sexy out there. You got to look sexy. That's important.
And you need to pass nail check, right? So make
and
sure
you got to
cut your
pass
nails.
nail check. You got to pass nail check, right? But just start kind of laying out the general plan in the 24 to 40 hours before the event that you're going to execute to make sure that when you do get to game day, that you are absolutely in a place physically and mentally of strength, of performance, of excitement, of elation, and realize we're not in that 48 hours right now.
Right.
Where are you right now? Well, we're, 3 days even before that 48 hours. And so, if you are, kind of being affected by the fires, okay, you're still where your feet are. What can you do right now in order to, accomplish what you need to accomplish right now, and get present and get focused on where your feet are? Because again, you can't do anything about, what's happening this weekend, and you're going to be able to give yourself power by focusing on things you can actually control. And that'll bring you a lot more confidence as well. And so, what would you say, Sean, in the next couple of days, can't do anything about the games.
Hydrate.
Can't even do anything about, you can't even do anything about the 48 hours before that event yet, right? What can athletes be doing right now in the circumstances that they're within in order to enable themselves to get to that event in a high performance kind of state? Any ideas? What would you suggest?
I think in both where you're going to ODP, you're traveling, you get an opportunity to go play some of the best athletes in the country, or in Futures, right? You get an opportunity you're overcoming adversity, right? And you're sticking it to the fire, or, whatever, you're coming together the first time with your club. It's just an opportunity to play, right? And just focusing on the gratitude that goes along with that, I think, is one of the key things that, from a coaching perspective, that I would bring is just go into it. Obviously, you want to play well and you want to win, but you also just want to focus on the opportunity. Let's take the whole perspective. And I think that's one of the key things that Dusty brought to the conversation earlier today is sometimes we're just lucky to play, right? And because there have been times where we haven't been able to play. And so, and if you think about, not to dwell on the fires for Southern California, but you think about the trauma that community is facing. And part of it is I'm really glad that they're playing, because it's you're kind of sticking it to them, right?
You get to go out there,
you get
even
to go
under the
out.
dire circumstances.
Yeah, you get to go out there and play and show that, like, yeah, this is important, and maybe it gives a little bit different perspective. And then vice versa, going to Texas, right, playing ODP, like, you have an opportunity to go play your best with the best athletes out there in the country, right?
Congratulations, you're with them. You're playing with them. You're gonna be playing with them. I think that's the fun part. But yeah, like honestly, like, just check yourself. Check yourself right now. Like, if you find yourself kind of focusing on, or like really like, worrying about, or you're envisioning or visualizing that future, like, good. I love that. And you're not there yet.
Right.
Just bring yourself back to where your feet are. And if you're traveling, travel. Like, watch the dang movie. Right. Like grab, if you're doing the plane thing, make sure, just be where your feet are, right? Like, be in the plane. And when you get to the hotel, be at the hotel, go swimming, go jump in the hot tub, right? Go enjoy yourself as an individual. The fact that you are an athlete that gets to go out and travel, like, that is so freaking cool. So just take in the experience, because that's cool, right?
Yep.
And then, yeah, you can do the things that athletes do. Athletes hydrate, athletes sleep well, athletes take their attention from a future and they bring it back to the present. So they're focused on the processes they take rather than, the things that they want. Yeah.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I mean, you as the athlete, you get to decide what right looks like for you and what you need to be doing. But all I'm asking you is do what you can where you're at with what you've got.
Right.
Yeah. And bring yourself back into that moment. That's where the highest performing athletes are, that's what they're capable of doing, is acknowledging that they're in that future space. Okay, I'm going to be there, but I'm not there right now. And so I'm going to be here and I'm going to do what I can with what I've got right now in order to get there in a way that is productive and high performing.
Cool. Let's move one quick situation where athletes in the water. It is a high pressure situation because, athletes want to play well, and people are being evaluated. They're trying to get national teams and get onto zone teams through ODP, or, they're trying to keep that spot in D1. You shoot, you miss the goal, right? You have a bad play one way or the other. Give us in 45 seconds a quick strategy that those athletes can use to move forward.
Pick one thing that you are an absolute monster at and focus on doing that to the highest, capability that you have. Period.
Right. Okay. There you go. Listen to Nate.
Well, I'm just going to be completely frank with you. Like, athletes suck at this. Like, they suck at when it's competition time. Is competition time the time for weaknesses?
No.
When's the time for weaknesses? When's the time to be focusing on the things we suck at?
Practice.
Because practice is the time to learn and grow and develop and get better. When's the time for strengths?
Right. There's games, competition. Yeah.
So when you're going into competition and okay, you're getting feedback, you're getting a lot of criticism and you should be doing this better and you should be doing that better. Honestly, as a mental performance trainer, I don't give a darn what you suck at. Because champions are not made, and they are not champions because of what they sucked at.
Right.
They are champions because of what they are amazing at and executing that amazing thing they do. And so if you make a mistake, great, congratulations, you took the chance.
Right.
Awesome. And now refocus back on the things that you are just a monster at and execute those, because those are the things that got you to where you're at.
Right.
Like I think there's a time and a place, and I don't think many athletes understand this. Like, there's a time for weaknesses, and the weaknesses is for practice. When it comes to playing well and going into flow, it's not about focusing on what you suck at. It's about focusing on what you're amazing at. So lean back into that thing that you are just an absolute monster at and do it.
Love it. Yeah. Love it. Nate, tell me, how do athletes connect with you if they wanted to work with you?
Oh yeah. You can get on, in touch through Instagram. I got a great profile there that's got a whole bunch of content and information that parents and athletes can utilize to not only be high performing parents, but also athletes can kind of understand some of these nuances as it relates to the mental game, because there is a definition of what right looks like when it comes to being an athlete and how you think as an athlete. And honestly, I just don't think many people are aware of the little things that they can do to feel a heck of a lot better when it comes to gameplay.
Right. Nate, will you do this again with me?
Oh yeah.
Fantastic.
Is that it? Was that all?
That's
like
it.
that was fun. Like
Sorry.
that was like 15 minutes of greatness right there.
We have more opportunity. I invited you back, right? I invited you back.
You did. I appreciate every opportunity I can get.
We've got it. We've got to let people. We're bumping up against an hour here on the podcast, and so we've got to let people move on with their day, right? Like, I mean, but yeah, like connect with Nate. He's an incredible, as you can tell, an incredible personality, an incredible coach, and will change your game. And I can fully attest because I've got 5 kids, and I think all 5 of them have worked with Nate and made it better. So there's a lot of things that parents can and can't do, right and wrong, and having them connect and think about how to be great at mental skills is one of them. Nate,
that's awesome. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate it. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us here this week on the Game On Water Polo Pod. We connected first with Dusty Litvak, the Futures League director. We talked about some strategy, the format of the 2025 Futures League and some looking forward into the future for Futures as well. Great conversation. So shout out to Dusty for that. Our middle guest there, our second guest was Jimmy Hurd coming in from California with 6-8 Sports. And we're talking about some of the opportunities that 6-8 Sports pertain to. Let's go back to Dusty real quick. I'm going to jump around here a little bit, but go search up Futures WPL on Instagram, social media. Like and follow those guys. 6-8 Sports is 6-8 Sports. And then we finished up with Nate last. And Nate is an incredible personality and a fantastic mental skills coach. You can check out and find his stuff at Mental Grit on Instagram, and just do Google search, you'll find him. He's done a great job there with his social and his platform. This is Sean Stringham, and you can always follow, like, subscribe, all of those kinds of fun things with Game On Live Studio. We are kicking off 2025 with a bang. It's going to be an incredible weekend. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week. Hit that like button, follow, subscribe, all of the kind of cool things. You can help us out. Keep your head on a pivot, right? Or on a swivel, either way. Peace.